Hey y'all, I cannot believe Thanksgiving is over and Christmas is almost here. Let me start this video by saying all these meals were done the week of Thanksgiving or like right after, so it's not like I'm in the beginning of December eating leftovers from Thanksgiving. But anyway, I'm going to show you how we turned our Thanksgiving leftovers into 5 different meals. And the first one we had started out as turkey pot pie. I started out by grabbing my leftover turkey breast and just shred that up. I have 2 different pie crusts. I don't know how I ended up with 2 different ones, but I had 2 different pie crusts that I used as well. So in a bowl, I added my shredded turkey, a can of drained mixed vegetables, and 2 cans of cream of potato soup. And then you want to add in a little bit of cream or milk, whatever you have on hand. I did cream from our local Amish store. But add that into your vegetable mixture and turkey mixture, salt and pepper to taste, and then mix that all around until it's really well combined. Once everything was mixed really well, I added my filling mixture into my frozen pie crust. I did let it thaw out a little bit so it made it easier to work with, but I added it into my frozen pie crust and then just spread it all around into an even layer, and then I topped it with my boxed refrigerated pie crust. And then it did have some overhang, so I just crimped the edges to meet with the edges of the frozen pie crust. And then once I had that all sealed, I cut little slits in the top so it could breathe while it's baking. I put it in the oven to bake at 375 for about 40 to 45 minutes. This is my typical chicken pot pie recipe, so everybody loved it. Next, we had turkey soup. I used some of that shredded turkey, garlic, carrots, celery, potatoes, frozen peas, onion, butter, and pepper. Now, this is the fun part for me, but it may not be for some, so you can always prep your vegetables ahead. But I just grabbed 1 celery stalk, cut it in half lengthwise, and then just chopped it all the way down into decent sized pieces, not too big, not too small. Once I had all of that cut, I grabbed a yellow onion. It was somewhere in between small and medium, and then just diced that to about the same size pieces as my celery. In my cast iron skillet, I made sure I got it good and hot and melted down about 3 tablespoons of butter. And then I add in my chopped vegetables, my celery, my onion, and about a half a tablespoon of chopped garlic, and just cook those for about 4 or 5 minutes until the vegetables start getting soft. Just make sure not to burn the garlic. While my vegetables were sauteing in my cast iron, I went ahead and prepped the rest of my vegetables. I peeled and diced 2 russet potatoes, and then I peeled and sliced 3 whole carrots. In a large pot, I add in 4 quarts of chicken broth. I added in the softened vegetables, the celery, garlic, and onion, the 1 cup of frozen peas, about 2.5 cups of the shredded turkey, the carrots and diced potatoes, and then just some pepper. I didn't really add too much salt. I feel like chicken broth is kind of salty. So the salt was to taste, but I added in a lot of pepper because we like it that way. Once everything was in my pot, I brought it to a boil and just let it cook for about 15 to 20 minutes. While it was on the stove doing its thing, I made some dressing dumplings, and all it is about 2 cups of leftover dressing, 2 eggs, and a 1/3 cup of flour. I did use my little potato masher to kind of mash up the dressing to kind of break it up a little bit, but add the eggs and the flour in and just mix it all together until it's really combined to where you can make almost like a really wet dough with it. After I had everything mixed together, I just grabbed whatever size I felt was good, just whatever felt right in my hand. I grabbed a good little amount of the dressing and flour and egg mixture and just rolled it into a little ball until I had no more dressing left, and I just set them all in this little casserole dish and set them in the refrigerator while the soup was cooking. That way they could set up, because you don't want to add them into your soup and they get mushy and fall apart. After about 5 to 10 minutes of being in the fridge, I went ahead and pulled them out and added them into my soup, and they cook in there for about 5 to 10 more minutes, just long enough for them to absorb the flavor of the soup. And then when it was done, we just served it up in these cute little mugs and added a leftover roll from Thanksgiving that my parents brought. I topped my soup with a little fresh parsley. My kids thought that was gross, so I didn't top theirs that way, but this tastes just like chicken noodle soup, and it's so good. Next meal that we had was shepherd's pie. I've been making this since my 15-year-old was roughly about 2.5, and it's a family favorite all the time. I just started out by browning about 1.5 pounds of hamburger. I cook that until it's completely done and brown all the way through, no pink, and drain the grease. Once I drain the grease, I turn the heat off and removed the pan from that particular burner and added in my gravy and just mixed it really well. Once I had that really combined, I add in a can of mixed vegetables, drained, and then just stir it to coat all the vegetables. Once I had my filling mixture all combined, I just throw it in this casserole dish and top with some leftover potatoes from Thanksgiving. Make sure everything's spread out into an even layer, and then just top it with some shredded cheese, as little or as much as you like, or if you don't really care for cheese on top, you don't have to. I just pop it in the oven to bake, or really just melt the cheese. So I only put it in there for about 15 to 20 minutes at 375. While that was in the oven baking, I just heated up this little bag of frozen mixed vegetables. I believe it was like corn and asparagus and carrots and stuff like that. I have learned in my 15 years of parenting, cover everything in cheese and my kids will eat it. So I cooked that in the microwave according to package directions, and then just covered it in cheese, mixed it all together so it would melt, and my kids ate it like it was going out of style. I just spooned some of the mixture of the mixed vegetables on the plate, and then portioned out a slice or a spoonful, I guess, of the shepherd's pie. And that's how we served it. And like I said, shepherd's pie has been a family favorite of ours for 13 years. It's the simplest recipe and you cannot go wrong with it. Next, we had crock pot stew beef. And I am usually not one to buy crock pot sauces because I feel like I can make my own for cheaper. But my store had this little sauce on sale, so I grabbed it. And I just threw in the crock pot the whole package of stew beef meat. I cut up about 10 to 12 baby red potatoes. I just cut them in half, threw them in there, threw a whole bag of baby carrots on there, and then used this Campbell's slow cooker sauce. I believe it was like Tavern pot roast. That is the absolute best sauce I've ever tried. I put all the meat, all the vegetables in the sauce in this crock pot, and I did not add water to it. You just stir it, cover it, and cook it on low for like 8 to 10 hours. And once it's done, it looks and smells amazing. To serve it, we just used some of the leftover rice from Thanksgiving and topped it with the beef and vegetable mixture. And oh my gosh, it smelled just like my grandma's house, and it tastes just like my grandma's cooking. We absolutely loved it. The kids said it was a 10 out of 10. Okay, and the last meal we had, it was not a supper meal. It was more of a breakfast meal, but I did want to include it because we did use leftovers from Thanksgiving. This was a ham, egg, and cheese breakfast bake, and all I did was line the bottom of my baking sheet with an entire can of crescent roll dough. I just put it all in the bottom and pressed the seams together and then poked holes all over it, popped it in the oven to bake for about 7 minutes at 350. While your dough is in the oven, I just grabbed 6 eggs, add them to a bowl, add a little cream, salt, and pepper. That's my typical way to make eggs, and just whisk that all together. Once I had all my eggs whisked, I just set the bowl to the side. I grabbed 5 slices of leftover ham from Thanksgiving and just cube that up and set it to the side, and then grab some shredded cheese out of the fridge. After 7 minutes, I pulled the crescent dough out of the oven and I just poured over my eggs that we had whisked together. I sprinkled over all of my diced ham, and then I sprinkled over about 2 generous handfuls of triple cheddar shredded cheese, and then put that back in the oven at 350 to bake anywhere between 17 to 22 minutes, depending on your oven. My oven only took 20 minutes. When it was done, I just pulled it out, cut it into equal slices, and served it up for breakfast. My kids loved it. My boyfriend loved it. I loved it. My only thought would be put some country gravy over it. I love country gravy. So to each their own, but I definitely recommend making this. It is super easy and it is a very filling breakfast.